UNC professor Jacqueline Maria Hagan. What's this picture on the cover of your newest book, Migration Miracle?
It's a cross. And it's a cross on top of a mountain. The mountain is situated along the US-Mexico border. And it's symbolic of the many migrants who have died in their attempts to cross the border into the United States, doing so without papers, without authorization. And as we know from, as you may know, and the media has told us, the numbers of fatalities, of migrant fatalities, are increasing. And I think this year there were 400 deaths incurred to Central Americans and Mexicans crossing into the United States. So that cross symbolizes their crossing experience, and the title of the book, Migration Miracle, is basically taken from the words of the migrants who often described their successful journey as a miracle.
How did those 400 die? What were the causes?
The causes range from being killed by a smuggler, to suffocating in the back of a car, to asphyxiation, to drowning in the All-American Canal or in the Gulf of Mexico. Many dying in the deserts, not being able to reach food or water, being left behind. Not really, I mean, many of the migrants who traveled here without papers are uncertain about their journey. And so it's organized increasingly by multiple coyotes, and it's become much more organized. And it's much more difficult for migrants to rely, for example, on a single person that they may know who has migration experience to take them across the border. So as the borders become heavily militarized, and there's been more campaigns along the border to prevent migration, it means that migrants have had to find more dangerous ways, basically, to reach the United States and rely increasingly on organized trafficking to get here.
Professor Hagan, is there an average cost that these migrants are paying to get across the border?
Yes, and it's skyrocketed. If you're on the Mexican side of the US border, and maybe in one of the border cities, it might cost you $800 or $900. But if you're traveling from a small hamlet in the highlands of Guatemala, it could be upward of to $8,000. And it often involves then having your family's home put as on hold in ransom, and they're often taken. So it's an enormous amount of money, and most of it's paid up front, some of it, well, half of it's paid up front in most cases, and then half upon arrival. And throughout that time, the coyote carries all the papers that would document that person, like passports, birth certificates, etc. So they're really at the mercy of the persons bringing them. Now, there's many good coyotes or smugglers, but there's also many unscrupulous smugglers. So it's a mixed bag there, because I have many stories from migrants who smugglers came across them and found them in the desert and helped them. And then other cases where they were told that they were left behind.
How much time have you spent on the border in your work?
Oh gosh, I've been doing my field work for Migration Miracle since 2009, but I spent time on the border before that because the project that really motivated this was a study on death on the border, and it was about trying to enumerate for the first time the actual fatalities that occur to migrants. So I had visited a number of coroners' offices and talked to religious leaders along the border and hospitality homes or safe houses to get an idea of what was going on. And that kind of motivated this larger project, was to understand how they manage and survive and place meaning on the migration journey itself.
Did you meet with coyotes?
Yes, I met with coyotes, but not, I met with the coyotes when I had to go pick up some migrants at a safe house, and I had to bring extra money so that they could be released. So often what you find is a situation where you arrive at a safe house, and then they call a family member in the States and ask for additional funds, even though they've paid the amount. And in this case, I knew the young man personally, and so then I was able to secure the funds and able to go meet with them and the Coyotes.
Migration Miracle. One of the first things you say is that this is organized into 6 parts. Leave taking, dangerous journey, churches crossing the border, miracle in the desert, and La Promesa. What is leave taking?
Leave taking is the first stage of the migration process, the decision making that goes into whether or not to leave, and when the decision is made to leave, when to leave. So it's about thinking about the costs of the migration. It's about leaving one's family, one's community, all that one holds dear. And in most of the migrants in my study, they leave because they have no alternative. And it's a very difficult choice. Many of these migrants had never even been to the capital city or a large city in their own countries, but they were migrating across thousands of miles and multiple fortified borders. So leave taking is about decision making, making that decision. And often, migrants will turn to family, of course, to discuss leave taking, and it's often a household strategy migration, to send one member of the family up to earn wages to send back, to support the family left behind. But migrants also increasingly turn to religion, both at a personal and institutional level. It's basically, religion is the institution that they trust. It's the one institution they can identify with mostly. And it's expressed in numerous ways, but often and very often through counseling and blessings. So one of the interesting findings across all the groups in the study and all of the different religious faiths was, in fact, this reliance on migration blessings before they left. They found them very powerful, almost an unofficial passport, a spiritual passport, something that carries so much significance for the migrant themselves. So that's about leave taking.
When these young people, and mostly young people, in Guatemala, Mexico, wherever, mostly male?
No, increasingly more and more women are coming. And that's
Solo?
not surprising. And solo, I met a lot of women coming solo. I can recall one instance, it was in the border town of Tecuman, right on the border of Mexico, where I encountered a young woman with her baby must have been about 1, maybe 2 years of age, and she was praying in a church to the Black Christ, which is a very important religious icon in Guatemala, and well, it's the patron of Guatemala. And when I talked to her, she was praying to locate someone to travel with her across the border, because she recognized she was too dangerous to travel alone. So yes, increasingly women, some of them coming to join their husbands, some of them coming for work. Most of the time, the women are going to be escorted by coyotes and do not attempt to travel alone. And if a family has savings prepared for the migration journey, they're more likely to provide them to the woman because of the dangers, the extra dangers she might face, such as rape or...
What are their impressions, or what do they think the U.S. is like during this stage?
I don't think they think of it as the American dream as they did when I started my migration research maybe 20 years ago, which was a common expression. I think now they recognize that there's serious risks, and in many of the interviews they're thinking more about the journey, the fear of the undertaking, the leaving, the possibility that they might not ever see their family again is very real. And so that's, I think, what is